TB. Two simple letters. Two letters that represent a disease with monumental impact. Also known as tuberculosis, this disease was considered a death sentence in the past. And even though disease burden continues to decline, it's still considered one of the top leading causes of death worldwide.
In 2017, 10 million people developed TB, with a 2-to-1 greater prevalence in men compared to women. Tuberculosis resulted in 1.6 million deaths, with a significantly higher casualty rate of 20% in people with HIV. There is also a higher disease burden in third world countries such as India, China, Pakistan, and Nigeria. During raging TB epidemics in 19th century Europe, German microbiologist Robert Koch was the first to discover the microbial cause of tuberculosis. We now know that TB is an opportunistic infection caused by the bacteria Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It particularly impacts those with compromised immune systems, including smokers, HIV-positive individuals, and those who are malnourished or diabetic.
Importantly, there are two types of the tuberculosis infection. Latent TB, which is not contagious and asymptomatic, and active TB, which is infectious. If you have latent TB at some point in your lifetime, you have a 10% chance of developing active TB. Tuberculosis can be passed on in aerosols via inhalation when someone coughs or sneezes.
In this active form, the lungs are weakened, typically resulting in pulmonary tuberculosis, but extrapulmonary TB can also occur and contributes to 20 to 25% of the total disease burden. This includes infections to the urogenital tract, digestive system, and skin. Plus, there is potential infections at lymph nodes and bones and joints.
In active TB, there are multiple pathophysiological processes that result in disease maintenance.
M. tuberculosis is carried into the lungs, and if droplets are small enough, they reach alveolar spaces. If the immune system fails to respond to this infection, they proliferate inside alveolar macrophages, which ultimately leads to cell death. These infected macrophages attract other phagocytic cells as they produce cytokines and chemokines. If bacterial replication remains uncontrolled, the production of an enlarging tubercle occurs, followed by the entry of bacteria into the surrounding lymph nodes. The cell-mediated immune response occurs 2 to 6 weeks after the initial infection. If this response is not sufficient, it results in the progressive destruction of the lung.
Virulence factors of Mycobacteria tuberculosis enable these processes. They are non-motile, acid-fast, and obligate aerobes that have an extraordinarily thick cell wall and mycelic acid positioned on the cell surface in order to protect against the immune response.
The rapid development of drug-resistant TB also enables pathogenesis. 500,000 people in 2017 contracted rifampicin-resistant strains, and 82% of these cases were multi-drug resistant. A further 9% of these cases were extensively drug-resistant, which are much harder to treat and diagnose.
Although there are many signs and symptoms of tuberculosis, there's not always a homologous presentation.
According to the Centre of Disease Control and Prevention, the main symptoms include a severe cough, fever, weight loss, appetite loss, feeling of sickness or weakness, and night sweats, which gradually increase in severity over time. This slow onset leads to delay in seeking medical assistance. Later stage pulmonary tuberculosis is characterized by severe wasting, coughing of blood, and lymphadenopathy. This is a characteristic manifestation of tuberculosis and includes enlarged and abnormal lymph nodes. The initial infection can also result in pneumonitis, which is inflammation of the lung tissue, along with bacteremia, where bacteria gets into the bloodstream from the initial infection. Other parts of the body can also be impacted.
Even though tuberculosis is both curable and preventable, it is still a major public health problem. We need to develop better diagnostic and treatment methods in order to be able to reach our 2030 goals as part of the NTB strategy. So, all of this in the aim to minimize the damage caused by two simple letters.